Good evening. You're listening to Eveangel Savage of Audacity Group Social Enterprise. This evening we have Miss Cheryl Cloyd Robbins, the writer of Imani Hates the School Bus, joining us this evening, and we're going to be talking a little bit about her exploration into the world of books, into the world of writing and authorship, and what that all has meant to her and how she has been inspired to write. And so we're just going to allow right now Cheryl Cloyd Robbins. Are you there?
I'm here.
Introduce yourself to our listening audience, Miss Cheryl.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name is Cheryl Cloyd Robbins, and as Eveangel mentioned, I am the author of Imani Hates the School Bus. It is the first children's book to be published out of Rain Incorporated. Imani is a therapeutic tool that we are using to help children become their own hero. The story or the premise of the book is that Imani has a secret, and this book takes her through how to explain her secret to an adult. And at the end, there's a worksheet for a child who may have something that they need to tell, and it just helps them form those words so that they are able to inform an adult that they need help. It's probably my favorite piece of work. The art was done by Jamal Barber from J. Barber Studios in Atlanta, and it was a very emotional and labor of love kind of project to do, because we really want to empower children to become to find their voice. And I think that we could probably go on and on about the effects or impacts of childhood abuse and childhood sexual abuse and that kind of thing, and how it impacts children long after the incident has occurred or continues to occur or whatever. But this book helps that child gain a voice, and it takes some of the fear factor out of play, so that people who are preying on children aren't able to always convince that child that people won't believe them or that they will be taken away from their parents and that kind of thing. All of the things that people say or predators say to keep a child silent, we try to take that out of play so that the child knows the facts. It is a middle school grade level book. A fifth grader may have a little bit of a hard time, but definitely 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We've also had adults who read the book who had an emotional reaction to it or reaction to it, and it helped them to say what they needed to say. So it is definitely my favorite piece of work. I think it's the most helpful piece of work that I've been able to produce, and so we're really happy with it. We're working every day to get it into the hands of children and get it into the hands of adults and people who can help start those conversations.
Excellent. And we're just going to reel back just a little bit so we can learn a little bit more about Cheryl Cloyd Robbins, the writer.
Sure.
Tell us about her and where she's from, where she went to school. Tell us a little bit about Miss Robbins.
Okay. I was born in Hertford County, North Carolina. I grew up in a small town called Murfreesboro, North Carolina. Next biggest town, which is not even a big town, is Hosky, North Carolina. So I was born there, raised there. When I graduated high school, I attended East Carolina University, and I got a bachelor's degree in psychology. And I ended up in the human resources field, and eventually went to Troy University to get my master's degree in human resource management. But while I did all that, I was very much still writing. I began writing in high school, right out of middle school into high school, when my grandfather passed away, and I wrote a short story about his passing, and that is what introduced me to the therapy of writing and being able to express emotions on paper. And throughout my life and throughout my career, even though I kind of went a different direction, I still always came back to writing. I did a lot of poetry. And in 2006, I self-published my first book, Every Goodbye Ain't Gone. And in 2008, I self-published the sequel to it, which was This Ain't Over. And went on tour with that book and continued to, work my 9-to-5 job. I wrote under a pen name, and then decided that I would take a break and work on some other stories and that kind of thing. And then I was partnered with Norma Warren and TaylorMade Publishing to relaunch my books under a different title, and eventually brought those titles into Rain Incorporated, in-house publishing. And so those two books are Deliver Us from Evil and Forgive Us Our Trespasses. So those are the two novels that I have out, and they are pretty much my one-night stand series. And I call that my one-night stand series because a lot of my readers are able to read it very quickly, in just one night, or sometimes, they do it while their children are at soccer practice or while they're on lunch breaks and that kind of thing. So it's a quick read. It's an easy read, but it's a well-developed story and very exciting and enticing characters. And so that line of books is called my One Night Stand series.
So you hook your author.
I try very, very hard.
So it sounds to me like you didn't study. Most people think writer, they think, okay, she majored in English, but you majored in psychology, which explains why Imani Hate the School Bus is such a great piece for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you say your grandfather, your ambitions for writing came about or were inspired by, something tragic that happened in your life. Did you write throughout school, or was this the beginning of it when your grandfather passed, or was writing always something that you knew you enjoyed doing?
Well, it was always something that I was good at. I always excelled in my English compositions and stuff like that. I really enjoyed creative writing and any kind of ability to any type of opportunity to create something. I didn't realize that it was as therapeutic as it was for me until that tragedy. And because my family at that time was, I remember my aunt saying to me, you're a Cloyd, you're supposed to be made out of tougher stuff than this, because I was so just devastated by losing him, and I just didn't know how to mourn.
Right.
And so being able to write it, and I actually entered it into a contest, and it won a few contests throughout the high school and throughout the state. But more importantly for me, it was a way to acknowledge the feelings and mourn him in my own way without at the time, the criticism of, you're supposed to be tougher than this, and, you need to be stronger.
Right.
So,
and being strong doesn't mean that you shouldn't grieve.
Exactly. And looking back, I know that what my aunt said was not exactly what she meant. What she meant was, we have to get through this. She didn't mean don't grieve. But
right, let's find a way.
To a kid, it was like, oh, I got to hold it all in. And so, this was my way of being able to acknowledge him and to honor him and to mourn him in a way that I thought was acceptable to my family.
Super. So give us tell us where we can buy or see your books. Tell us where we can get them, what promotions you have going on or prices. Tell us a little bit about
Okay, sure. So Imani Hates the School Bus can be found at www.reinincorporated.com, and REIN is spelled REIGN, so reinincorporated.com. You can find Imani Hates the School Bus. You can also find Deliver Us from Evil and Forgive Us Our Trespasses on that same website. You also can find the 2 adult books on my personal website, which is CherylCloydRobbins.com, and that's CloydRobbins.com, CherylCloydRobbins.com, and those are available on my website. And also on that website, my soap opera, my literary soap opera is there, Season 1 and Season 2, and that's called Forbidden Fruits. And that was actually turned into a web series in January of this year. But the literary version, which is the original version, is still available on my website, and that's CherylCloydRobbins.com, CherylCloydRobbins. Imani Hates the School Bus is $13. Deliver Us from Evil and Forgive Us Our Trespasses are both $12.
Okay. Well, we're going to take some time right now, though. We're going to talk a little bit about, you've given us some insight on your main character for Imani Hates the School Bus. Tell me again, let's just go back just a little bit more about Imani and her encounter, and if that's okay with you, if that's something.
Sure, absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit more about that character and what she's up against.
Okay. All right. Well, Imani is 8 years old, and she is being sexually abused by her bus driver. And what the bus driver has told her is that if she tells anyone, then she would be taken away from her parents. And so Imani starts getting in trouble at school so that her mother has to come pick her up or her father has to come pick her up from school, and she doesn't have to ride the school bus. So that's her way of acting out and avoiding being on the school bus with this bus driver. And the guidance counselor and principal recognize that this is not her normal behavior. And, she usually does well in school, and she, has a lot of friends, and she has become withdrawn and is getting in trouble. And so the principal recognizes this and begins to have a conversation with Imani, and Imani eventually opens up, and then the secret is revealed. And throughout the book, Imani starts out with, she's gray, her skin is gray, she is looking down because she has this weight on her shoulders. And throughout the book, as her secret is revealed, and as her principal and her guidance counselor and her mother and the doctor that she sees, as everybody begins to embrace and support her, she begins to gain her color, her eyes lift, and you can see the smile come back on her face. And that's why it was really important to me to have an artist actually do the work versus some type of digital compilation. I wanted someone who really could make that transition for her, because it was very important, I think, for the flow and the reader to see the change, not just the emotional change, but the physical change in her as her secret is revealed and that burden is lifted.
I'm just realizing
so it takes her through that process.
Right, and it was an exciting piece. And now that I look back over it, I think about the illustration as well and how well connected that was to the storyline. What genre do you classify Imani Hates the School Bus?
I classify it as a therapeutic tool. What I think it will be useful in behavioral health situations, in the foster care system, in maybe even the prison system, the juvenile prison systems, because you can go through any kind of statistic and find the correlation between, childhood sexual abuse and drug addiction, alcoholism, early teenage pregnancy, suicide rates. There's so many connections between those things. So it becomes a generational thing sometimes, and so all of those outlets I think would be relevant. Like I said, early teenage pregnancies, suicide rates can often be traced back to early childhood sexual abuse. Even how we as parents parent our children, even if it's not necessarily a negative thing where we are abusing or anything like that, but I mean, even the way that we interact and allow our children to interact with other children and other people and that kind of thing can often be traced back to these types of experiences. And so the sooner we're able to attack that problem and to give that child what they need to deal with what has happened, and we give them a voice and we empower them, the more likely we are to keep them from going down paths that just continue to wreak devastation on that person and that person's family and children and generations to come. So, I mean, I think that it is not only life-changing for, one person, but if we impact one person with that work, whole communities can be salvaged and whole communities can be protected because that person doesn't become a drug addict and that person doesn't end up in the penal system and that person doesn't rob or steal or kill or rape or abuse others and that kind of thing. So, we impact the whole community by giving that child a voice.
Right. So do you ever see Imani coming to life or her character coming to life?
Now, that I have never thought about. I don't know. I would have to really think about it. I mean, and when you say that, it does spark some imagination because Imani is the first of a series of books that Rain Incorporated intends to release. And so I can see it being part of like a mini-series. We have Imani. The second book is Carlos Chooses a Color, and that is about a little boy who is trying to avoid gang affiliation, but he lives in a situation where you kind of have to choose which way you're going to go. You're going to go one color or another color, or and the color being a representation of whatever gang is relevant in that community. And so, that's another part of the series. And then we have Hannah, Where Does It Hurt, which is about teenage depression. And I mean, I think that we can, all think of somebody either that we know or that we've heard about who was impacted by depression, and the suicide rate with children is skyrocketing, and so we want to address that. And then it can be tailored to other needs, from the mental health community and behavioral health communities. But back to your original question, I don't know that Imani as a standalone would come to life, but I think Imani as part of a series could definitely come to life. Wow, and maybe the whole package goes to each of these organizations.
Exactly. So it sounds like you do a lot of research because in order to understand or to bring these characters to, to write about them, you have to know what's actually happening in our communities and the social ills that exist. And sounds like you've done a lot of research on these social conditions. Have you ever written any other novels in collaboration with other writers?
No, the only collaboration that I've done so far was partly on Forbidden Fruits. One of my best friends, Steve Holmes, helped write part of season 2. So it was very easy to flow with him, and kind of intermingle our writing styles and kind of give the characters and the storyline kind of a new twist. But I'm definitely one that, I'm all about creativity and work. So, anybody that I run across that I can flow with, I'm all about writing with them. It's a lot of fun to me.
Excellent. And so what made you decide to sit down and actually, well, you told us that was your grandfather, but now when you get ready to write, what's a good writing scenario for you? I know I hear people often say writers have to have a conducive manner to write. What's that look like for you?
Well, for me, I really have to, I call it going underground. I really have to go underground with and cut myself off from other stimulation and other distractions, because when I write each character, I try very hard to live that character in that moment. And so I try to become, a 35-year-old male who is, just seeing his best friend shot. Or, I'm the 20-year-old, female who is going to the club because she's mad at her boyfriend. So, I try to become that, and it takes a lot of concentration and it takes a lot of focus. And so it's, unfortunately, I'm not someone who could say, okay, well, let me jump up and write, 30 minutes this morning and 30 minutes at lunch. And, 'cause I have to really get into the story and the character. And so I need to be kind of cut off from everyone and just be in a nice, quiet place. Sometimes I play classical music. Sometimes I play, like the rain or lakes and rivers and oceans, those kind of nature sounds and that kind of thing. But, I do all that to kind of cut out any distractions. And I love my Bose noise cancellation headphones. I use them all the time. And I can kind of shut down and shut away from other distractions, and then I just go for it. And when I get into the right mood, I can flow forever. The hardest thing is kind of getting away and getting being able to detach from everybody who may need my attention or may want my attention. And then I just let the characters talk to me. And some people, I think, write differently. I think a lot of people do it a more traditional way where they outline and they kind of know where their story is going to end up, and they write towards that ending, and it's very methodical. And I kind of let my characters tell me what's going to happen and where we're going to end up, and I wait until they're finished telling their story to move on. So I'll often joke that in my second book, Deliver Us from Evil, I had every intention of killing off the main character, Spencer McNeil. Mm-hmm. And he just would not let me kill him. So, it's kind of neurotic, but that's just how I flow.
Exactly. And so do you write full-time or part-time?
Part-time. I am looking forward to the day that I know is coming soon that I will be able to write full-time, because it is agonizing to have so many stories floating around in my head and not the opportunity to write it, and just trying to pick one to focus on at a time. But
so what I'm sorry? Writing? Are you writing digital type? Are you going back to the old-fashioned way, like writers, typewriters, dictation, longhand? How do you?
No, I use a plain old Word document. And I use Celtics for my screenplays or, screenwriting, my web series that we filmed. I use Celtics, but other than that, I use plain old Word. I don't like change, so I just use what I know.
And you said your creativity evolves from, I'm not sure exactly where. Well, in this case, Imani Imani Hates a School Bus, it's evolving from the need of therapeutic, the need for therapy for so many different reasons or social conditions in our community. Is that correct?
Yeah. Like I said, I think that, we can trace so much of what our community endures to situations like Imani. And so, if you give a child a voice, then your chances are better.
Right, they'll use it.
You can make a difference.
Well, what is the hardest thing you'd say about writing, if there is, for you?
The hardest thing for me is not being able to do it full time, and the business. And I'm very fortunate and blessed to have a business partner, Norma Warren, who handles a lot of the business for our company and lets me do the creative part. But we do have 4 divisions, and so there are several divisions that she handles, and I only handle one. So, just trying to find a way to support the other divisions while still being able to be creative, I think, is the hardest part. And then doing that while I'm, fully employed, have full-time employment somewhere else is hard. Fortunately, I haven't gotten to a point where I have writer's block. I hope I never do. I think that would probably be one of the worst feelings in the world, but, I think I have 6 stories going on in my head right about now. So I got a couple of years' worth of good work before I think I have to worry about writer's block if I were able to do it full time.
That's absolutely wonderful, because that was actually my next question. Do you ever get writer's block? I know that
not yet. Knock on wood.
So what are your thoughts on, you are writing a book series right now, and that is the series on the children's series. Is that correct?
Yes, we have the children's series, and like I said, we just finished Forbidden Fruits, and that was a web series, so we did 8 episodes of that. So I'm kind of used to writing under a lot of pressure.
Right, and you get it done. So do you read much?
I'm sorry?
Do you read much? And if so, who are some of your favorite authors?
I read quite a bit, not as much in the last couple of years as I've done in the past. I was a huge Maya Angelou fan. I liked Terry McMillan, a lot of the contemporary African-American artists, writers, Eric Jerome Dickey, Omar Tyree. I also like J. California Cooper. And I tried to read the classics sometimes. Just reread To Kill a Mockingbird not long ago. But the latest book I read was American Sniper, and I did that before I saw the movie. I wanted to read the book before I saw the movie, so I just finished that. That was by Chris Kyle, who was the subject of American Sniper. And then I'm a nerd, so I read like JFK, and I read Lincoln. I think I was probably one of the only people that read Lincoln, because it was like a huge monotonous read. But I like stuff like that. I'm kind of a nerd.
So that's okay. And how did the movie and book on American Sniper? You said American Sniper?
Yes.
How did that compare? The book to the movie?
The author was the actual sniper, so he was not a professional author. He told his story his way. The difference between the movie and the book, I think the book was more honest. It didn't have the Hollywood shave off the rough edges kind of stuff. It was very much what's the word? There is in the book, he was non-apologetic for his work. It was his work. He believed in it. He was not apologetic about it at all. In the movie, I think it comes across a little bit a more humane side.
Yes.
But I think that the book is more honest about what these soldiers, how they have to train themselves to be soldiers and snipers and,
And to survive.
Yeah, and to be in combat and to be in war. And so, I appreciated the honesty of the book, and I understand why Hollywood does what Hollywood does. But, the book, he was just very, very blunt about what he did and why he did it and that he believed in it. And, I thank God for people like him who can do it, because otherwise we wouldn't be a free democratic country, in my opinion.
Right. Now, there's so much more to producing a book than writing it. There's the final manuscript, there's the proofreading and editing and things of that nature. Do you proofread and edit all of your own books, or do you get someone else to do that for you?
I get somebody else to do it. I mean, I get it as good as I can get it. And that normally takes, 20 over a period of time, revisions here and there and everywhere. But, I tell anybody who is doing their own or who is trying to produce a book, if you're going to splurge, or if you're going to invest in editing. It is the most important thing besides having a good story. It is the most important thing. When your book is not well edited, it shows. And even when it is, and you still miss a period or a word, it just jumps off the page. So, I encourage people to invest in editing.
Yeah, and that's a good idea, because a lot of times when you're the reader, you'll miss those. After you reread, you're gonna miss those little errors.
Absolutely, and then I think you need a professional, because if someone that is a friend or someone is editing, because you have the copy edit and then you have the grammatical edit, you want somebody who will be tough on the work and who will tell you when there are holes in the story or when it's inconsistent or if you miss connecting dots, versus your friend who's going to just tell you, oh, it's great, it's wonderful, I loved it, and you miss the opportunity to really get feedback that's going to be constructive.
That's good. I like
and you need a professional, in my opinion, that can really catch all the tense changes and the punctuation and do you spell it this way or that way, and there are a lot of intricacies to it that set you apart as an amateur or professional.
Exactly. And you said this most recent book, Imani Hates the School Bus, was illustrated. So we know about that. Are most of your books? Do you use an illustrator or are they digital compilation? I heard you say that earlier.
Yeah, the Imani was the only one that we've used an actual artist to illustrate. The other two, we had a photo shoot with models that we were able to procure, and we use images from the photo shoot to make the cover.
That's an idea. So, do you self-publish?
Yeah, I mean, I self-publish under Rain Incorporated.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would you say are the main advantage and disadvantage of self-publishing against being published on around the other way?
Well, I think the biggest difference is the attention that the book gets, because when you are with a traditional publisher, they have, a dozen other authors and projects that require their attention. And so, your project is not number one, is not the only thing. When you're self-publishing or, you're in control of that, then you can throw all of your attention towards getting your work completed and marketed and sold and that kind of thing. So, there's pros and cons to doing it both ways. and it's just a matter of what type of creative control you want, and what kind of attention that you want. Of course, smaller publishing houses will, be able to give you more attention than the larger ones. But, then you're on another person's, schedule. So it comes out when they want it to come out, and it's sold where they want it sold, and, you really don't have the creative control that you have when you self-publish. But then again, when you self-publish, then the marketing and the sales and the printing and all the upfront costs, come out of your pocket versus out of a publisher, from the publisher. So there are pros and cons either way.
Yeah. And how do you market your books?
Well, luckily, like I said, I'm blessed to have Norma, Norma Warren, who is my business partner, and so she really does all the marketing. I do book clubs are my favorite. Internet, social media marketing is here, and it's here to stay, and it's something that we all have to master, and promote that way. And then word of mouth is always helpful. TV shows and radio shows like this are very, very helpful because you get out to a large group of people, and they hear about your work. So those, to me, have been the most lucrative. I was never very successful at, like, book fairs and stuff like that, where you have, 50 authors who are all trying to get the attention of whoever happens to be walking by. I've never been able to figure out that draw and make it happen for me. But, some people, I think, are very successful there. I guess it depends on your personality.
It does.
Yeah,
and
the introvert.
We all have our different styles, and yours.
Yeah.
And what do you do to get book reviews? Because books, you have these books, and you want people to read them, and you want people to talk about them. And what do you do to get those book reviews?
Oh, no, yeah, and that, I think, is something that we have just now been able to really understand. And, we've gotten a couple of very good book reviews, and we were able to put that out. Thank you very much. Those are really good. And like I said, social media marketing, blogging, and that kind of thing is here, and it's here to stay. It's something that I haven't quite figured out, but we're working towards it because that's where people are finding their next read.
Now, we know that a review of whether a review should be objective.
Yes.
Because you want to know that what the reader reads is what you were trying to convey, whether it was good or bad. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on those objective perspectives, good or bad reviews?
I think, anytime you can get the attention of someone to do a review, regardless of whether it's good or bad, first of all, I appreciate the time that it takes to even write a bad review, because at least that person read the book. Of course, we all want good reviews, and we want people to love what we did and articulate that. But as I said, like for Imani, this is part of a series. So if that person is saying something constructive that will help me make Carlos Chooses a Color or Hannah, Where Does It Hurt a better read, then I'm all for getting that feedback. I feel like I said, just if someone takes the time to write that review, then I appreciate that time. The only thing that it would be hard for me to accept is if they completely don't get what I'm trying to do. And I think that it's possible that someone could read a book like Imani and be offended, or feel like their child is somehow immune to something like this or a situation like this. I think there's a false sense of security that we have sometimes, And so that would bother me. But beyond that, as long as people are reading it and talking about it, I'm good.
Okay. Any amusing stories about how marketing books that happened to you that you want to tell us about? Anything amusing?
Amusing. I would have to think about that. Well, I think the good thing about having used local artists, local models, is that the model on Deliver Us from Evil and Forgive Us Our Trespasses he's an actor, and so I went to one of his plays, and we had a display up, and so people walked by and was like, "Oh, wait a minute, we just saw him on stage. Is this the same guy?" and that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's kind of funny that some people see him as Spencer McNeil. He's also been in several stage plays, and they see him as that character, and then he was also in our soap opera, so they see him as Art Baxter. So it's just funny seeing people react to him as what character do they remember him as. It's kind of funny.
Yes, it is. I knew there was something. Any tips on what to do and what not to do in terms of marketing?
Let's see. What to do is get on all social media and figure out how to get to bloggers, and then if you find that out, then tell me, please. But to really get into social media, I can't stress enough the opportunity to be seen when you are tweeting and Instagramming and Facebooking and Pinteresting and all the other Snapchatting and all that kind of stuff. There is that is how we interact now. That is definitely the way that we interact. And if you look at celebrities and you look at musicians and that kind of thing, almost all of them, unless you are Prince and you don't have to, all of them are engaging with their fans through social media. So I think that's an absolute to do. A not to do with marketing, I would say be careful where you spend your money. Business cards are okay, but would that money be better spent on ink pens that people have to pull out of their purse and, write whatever, and they see your book or your title? Is it better to, put an ad in a local, like a local G Vegas magazine or something like that, or should you spend that money hiring someone to tweet or blog? I think that you have to be very careful with, as far as at least for me, and not having money to waste on marketing that doesn't have a return on it. You just have to be very careful and realize that the way of the past is not necessarily the way of the future. So I would be careful in, buying a bunch of bookmarks and, buying a bunch of business cards and that kind of thing. You just have to really understand who your audience is and what is going to stick with them.
Right. That's very good information, and something the audience could certainly use. Is there any marketing technique that you use that had an immediate impact or return on your investment?
Let's see. Again, I have to say, like, for instance, for Valentine's Day, we did a special Deliver Us from Evil and Forgive Us Our Trespasses. Normally are $12 a piece, and for Valentine's Day we did 2 for $20, and we put that on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and we were able to get some movement, right away. So, I keep saying, social media, but I think that, there is a lot to be said for having an audience, a captive audience right there. And, it's not easy. There are rules to it. There are, times of day and days of the week that are better for marketing and for promotions than others, and so it's not easy, and it's definitely a science to it, and so it's worth trying to figure it out.
Wonderful. You mentioned a little bit about the marketing mistakes or do's and don'ts. Why do you think that, or have you thought about why other well-written books may not sell or just don't sell?
Yeah, I think that it has everything to do with exposure. It has everything to do with exposure and being diligent about getting the books in the hands of either enough people or the right people.
Exactly, that target. Who's most likely to read this type of this genre?
Mhm. And who's likely to buy it? And that takes research and luckily for me, African American women between the ages of 25 and 55-ish, with the median income of like $50,000, and they're usually parents. They buy books, and they buy a lot of books. They buy a trillion, not necessarily. I'm sorry, not a trillion, a billion. It's $1 billion business. It's a $1 billion industry. And African American women in that demographic are a huge contributor to that $1 billion industry. So I lucked up. At least deliver us from evil and forgive us our trespasses. So I just got to keep getting to them. But
or you may run across somebody like myself who I love to read, but I'm a researcher, so I read so much all the time that I can rarely get to read something that I enjoy. But Imani Hates the School Bus was an easy read for me. It was like on the spot at the actual premiere or opening of this book. I was able to read the book on spot, and it had its own impact. It had its own impact on me as a reader. And I'm just going to share that with the audience because I can. And and I think that for me, at this age, to read something like that where you automatically look at the title, and they always say, do not judge a book by its cover.
That's right.
I seem to always do that. I automatically think Imani hates the school bus. Oh, I hear children talk about the school bus all the time. They hate to ride it. I hear about my daughter's stories about the fights on the bus and yada yada. I would have never thought in a million years that storyline was going to take the twist that it took. And for me, it had an awesome. Well, I could say it had an awesome impact because I was able to. I had to debrief, but I was able to allow myself to feel something that I hadn't felt in so many years, in that I was able to say, okay, as a human service specialist, and now then that these feelings have surfaced, then you need to, probably get some intervention for this. Right. And I was more apt to take the very book to my therapist, and we discussed it, and we moved on some things that was really, 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 really vital to cross some of those thresholds that a lot of times we often just I know that I do. I'm more like the character Olivia Pope, fix it and keep moving. And been doing that all my life, and a lot of times we never, ever address the tragedies in our lives, and they go into us with our marriages, they go into us in our professional life, and a lot of times our lives are impacted and devastated in so many ways because those issues were never addressed. And so Imani Hates the School Bus. If you haven't purchased your copy yet, purchase your copy, whether you're a psychologist, a sociologist, a social worker, a human service worker, a nurse, a doctor, whatever field, child protective services, it doesn't matter. If you work in a field where you work with human beings or children, and where we typically have these stereotypes of what we see in children where they're misbehaving, and we never consider what may have happened, we really need to break some of these stereotypes and begin to look at what perpetuates or what influences some of the behaviors that we see. And so if you haven't purchased your book yet, I strongly suggest that you do. And I'm going to let you, Cheryl, tell them again where they could purchase this book. Imani Hates the School Bus. It was a dynamic piece, part of a series that Ms. Cheryl Cloyd Robbins, the writer, has introduced to our community, and should be in every school, on every shelf, in every therapist's office, in every social service, everywhere where there's children, in every child's hand, to get them talking. Let's be reading. Let's be talking. Let's have the conversations. Cheryl, if you will, tell them where they can purchase this book.
Okay. Thank you so much, Eveangel. I really appreciate your candidness and talking about Imani Hates the School Bus. And I think that T.D. Jakes said it best. He said, what is covered doesn't heal. And Imani is taking the bandage off of hurt and allowing it to be addressed and healed, and allowing it to have its place. And I don't mean take over your life, but it has a place in your history that, or in a child's history, that deserves to be acknowledged and dealt with and then put away. And so, that is what drives us every day to keep pushing Imani until every child is able to speak up for themselves and feel good about it. Imani Hates the School Bus can be purchased at www.reinincorporated.com. And REIN is spelled REIGN, reinincorporated.com. Individually, they are $13. However, if there is an organization or entity that wants to purchase in bulk, then we will definitely do some discounting for bulk purchases and orders, because we really, really, really want these books in the hands of children, of teenagers, of adults, of anybody who can be impacted. And I think we all can be impacted in some way, to open our eyes to a child, to help a child, to help ourselves, or whatever the case may be.
Wow. And is there a contact number?
Sure. The contact number is 252-917-1585, and that's for Norma Warren. Again, 252-917-1585. And all orders can be placed there. We can be contacted via the website, Facebook, you name it, we're there. REIN Incorporated, or Cheryl Cloyd Robbins, or Norma Warren.
And we are talking to Cheryl Cloyd Robbins, the author of Imani Hates the School Bus. We thank you so much for joining us here tonight. You're listening to Eveangel Savage of Audacity Group Social Enterprise, and we thank you so much. Signing off, good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.